Hey all, nice to have everyone here today. I'm Jonathan, as Megan said. I'm a Mikaboo volunteer. In fact, everybody presenting here today are Mikaboo volunteers. Mikaboo is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to education and rescue and adoption of companion birds. We're a virtual organization with no paid staff, and I'll put in a plug here. We rely on donations to be able to serve the birds. We take in more than 200 birds a year, and they're given care, medical care when need be, and put in foster homes and then adopted into adoptive homes. We currently have over 400 birds in foster homes, and the costs are staggering, averaging $40,000 to $50,000 for just veterinary bills every month. And that wasn't a misprint or whatever the voice equivalent is. That's $40,000 to $50,000 per month for essential vet care. And those costs are so high because often newly rescued birds require extra medical attention after being neglected, or failing health, accidents from them getting out and escaping, or injury from other pets or animals. So if you're able to help, please consider donating. And if you're looking to adopt a forever bird friend, you are in the right place. So that's the end of the infomercial. Let's talk about the adoption and foster process. Excuse me. Since we're an all-volunteer organization, and because we want to be really careful about the well-being of the birds, the process can take a while. It's not just like go to the shelter, pick out a dog, and go home with the dog. It takes several weeks to get through the process because it's multi-stage with several interviews. We want to ensure that we get to know you and your situation and your needs and wants, and review what we learn carefully and help you make an educated decision about what kind of bird is right for you. This process can take 8 to 10 weeks, or sometimes even longer for one of the bigger birds. Please be patient. The results are so worth it. And if you feel like you haven't heard from us for a little while, please do ping us. Sometimes things accidentally drop, and the reminders are welcome and helpful. So the process begins with our basic bird class, because parrots are not simple beings to care for, and they require a lot from their human companions. And in that class, we cover parrot behavior, health and well-being, feeding, care, and other topics to ensure that our birds will be able to thrive in their new homes. After taking the class and filling out an application online, you're ready for the next step, and that's a phone screen. This is an opportunity for us to better understand you and what you're looking for, and also get a sense of your understanding of birds and bird care, and help you with that if you need help, as well as a great chance for you to have the ear of a Mikaboo volunteer of your very own to ask questions to directly. After the phone screen comes a home visit. These are also done virtually now via Zoom. So it seems like, well, why don't you combine them? But it's really helpful to have them separate and have different people doing the assessments, because people see different things, interact differently. It's just a really useful for the whole process. And I want to be clear, it's not like a white glove test. What we want to see is the situation and help you identify potential dangers in your home, help you figure out what good options are for cage placement, and once again, answer your questions. After that, you get to meet the birds. Now, in this time of COVID, that's been a little bit more challenging, and you may be wondering how we do that. And we are doing it by maintaining social distance. So primarily, we are using platforms like Zoom to meet the birds remotely. And while that's not as much fun as walking in and, seeing the bird in person, in certain ways it's got some real advantages, because the bird is not responding to a strange person being present. And therefore you get to see the bird kind of more in their natural who they are. For some of the bigger birds, we can possibly do a socially distant visit in person, taking either the bird's cage out or taking them out in a carrier, with, so that the whole thing can be done outside with appropriate distancing. We do no-touch handoffs when it's time to adopt or foster a bird. So we'll leave the carrier on the porch or in front of the door, step away, you come bring the bird inside, get the bird settled, bring the carrier back out, go back inside, we take the carrier cage away, all good. So we're really working to make this as safe and effective a process as possible. So today we're going to be meeting some of our Mikaboo birds who are seeking forever homes. And you'll notice we have several Budgies lined up today. We were going to have the band Earth, Wind and Fire come in and perform their hit Budgie Wonderland, but sadly they had other engagements, so we'll just have to miss that. We're going to start with Azula and Hope, and I think their friend Superman, both of whom are Budgies, who are also known as parakeets. And then Rocky, an Amazon, Magglio, another Budgie, and then Lucca and Caspar and Pretty Bird. Lucca's a conure, Caspar and Pretty Bird are cockatiels, and these three are all really close friends and are a bonded trio, which sometimes happens. And then Do, Ray, and Me, who are Finches, another companion bird, very wonderful, wonderful to have in your home or environment. So we'll talk about all of them. So let's meet the birds. We're going to start by cutting over to Peggy, who has Azula and Hope. Is Superman in the cage with them, or has he been separated out?
No, Superman has been separated out. When they came as a family, and we've had some spring hormone issues, and so Superman has been removed.
So you said that they came as a family. Were these, first of all, Peggy, I have to stop myself and remind our viewers that you can ask questions about Azula and Hope in the Q&A, and either our volunteers will answer it or they'll send the question to me and we'll talk about it right here in chat. So did these three come in from an aviary, or what's their story, and what do you mean when you say they're a family? Tell us about the three of them.
Well, the individual who surrendered them was no longer able to care for them due to health issues, and so decided the best thing for the birds was to surrender them to Mikaboo. So she had gotten the birds, they were all rescues that came to her, and Azula and Superman did the dirty deed, and
they were breeding
after attack, they were breeding. Yes, and so apparently initially they attacked their eggs, and so of course none hatched, and then they successfully had Hope, which
one is
Hope? The yellow bird.
Ah.
Hope is the yellow one, and Azula. Azul means blue in Spanish, so Azula is the mom, Hope's the baby, and she's about 60 days old now. And so that's how
very young.
She's very young. So we're calling her she because Hope tends to be more of a girl name, but she's really too young to know.
Right.
So it's more like she, he, we can't tell yet.
Right.
But she is very, very active, very, very playful, and she's the one in the front. She got all ready for her debut today and took a bath, and about an hour ago she was soaking wet from the bathtub. So,
yeah, I can see how active she is, and she's hopping back and forth on perches and flying over to a swing, baby Budgie on a swing. So cute. Yes,
they're very active. They also they like their greens. I make them almost like a salad every day, and what's really funny is they love their broccoli, and they'll pick all the little flowers off the broccoli, and they manage to get it not only all over the cage but all over the table that their cage is on. And I think Azula was an interior decorator in another life because she also likes to disconnect things and drag things all over the place.
Oh, nice. It's, she can work from home doing that, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
So we would want to adopt these two as a pair?
They could go as a pair, or Azula could go with another female, and with the baby, since we don't know what it is, it would be a case of, we would just need to figure out either, you know, just make sure that hormone issues and all that stuff would be addressed should it turn out that she goes off and becomes a he or what, and that the potential adopter would just know that we don't know what gender she is.
Right. And I'll point out, and you've had experience with this, Peggy, but because budgies are such social birds, we only adopt them either as pairs or groups or into homes that have other budgies, because a single budgie by themselves is generally a very, very sad bird. So you mentioned that they're enjoying broccoli and some other greens. What else do they eat?
So they came in on a diet of both pellets and seed.
That's great.
And I've added in Nutri-And, which is a pellet, or it's like a cube-based diet that is commercially made and is a combination of pellets and seeds. And they've gone to that very, very well. They like a little bit of millet now and again, and we're working on that to see if we can get them, you know, to come to your hand and that, because that's a great way. You know, most budgies will do almost anything for millet. So if you're patient, you know, I put my hand in with the millet on, and the good thing is I've only had them now not even 3 weeks, and the hand doesn't bother them. They watch, they go back and forth, but it's not like they're terrified when the hand goes in. The
That's
previous,
really great. I'm gonna interrupt for a second, because they were coming in from a situation where they weren't getting, you know, a ton of attention. Their owner wasn't able to care for them. So the fact that they're not afraid of hands is really great and bodes well for, you know, for them being to get on well with people.
Yes. And even Superman, he will also, he didn't, and the fact that I just took him out of the into his own cage about 4 days ago, I guess I've been forgiven, because when I put the millet in, he hopped back and forth and back, and there was no panic involved. So I think they all have great potential in terms of being hand tamed.
Awesome. Do we know about how old Azula and Superman are? Superman is also up for adoption. He's just not on the screen.
Correct. I would say they're young. Beyond that, we don't know. One came from up in one of the fire areas up in the North Bay, and the other one sounds like it may have been found in the area where the surrenderer had lived. And so we don't know. But from their behavior and everything, I would say, Haley, I would say they're young. Probably no more than a couple of years old.
Yeah, Azula is also very active, not quite as bouncy as Hope. Let's talk a little bit about living arrangements and the size of a cage for 2 budgies and the kinds of toys and perches you have in here.
So they have this cage is 18 by 18 by 30 inches long. When you select cages for budgies, you always want to get the biggest cage you can get and the longest, because you want them to fly, and budgies don't fly up and down, they fly sideways in their cage.
Hey, Peggy.
So this is
Peggy.
Yes.
Interrupting for a second. Is the long way the direction we're looking at, like the back of the cage, 30 inches away?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's 30 inches away. Yes. So this would be about the largest, or the size that I would put 2 in. It's starting to get cramped if there's 3 in here and they're very active.
So this is the smallest you would have 2 in.
I have had smaller cages, but I usually tend to use them for either, and these birds are still in quarantine too, let me point out. When they're in quarantine, sometimes I put them in a smaller cage if it looks like they may have health issues, because if you have to catch them to take them to a vet, it's easier to do it in a small cage. Right. Or if they have health issues and you have to medicate them, then they go in a smaller cage, because you're going to probably having to take them out twice a day to medicate. So, but otherwise, this would be my standard smaller cage. And then I do have flight cages that are larger that I have some in the other room.
So I want to touch on something that you mentioned. It's an important point that Mikaboo, we have a policy that when you're bringing new birds into a household that already has birds, that you quarantine them for 6 weeks. And that's because birds are really good at hiding illness. So even though we think that the birds are healthy, they might have something that's not showing. And we want to make sure that they don't communicate that illness to the existing birds in the household. At the end of 6 weeks, we generally have a pretty good sense.
Right.
So I was going to ask you how you were handling the fact that Azula and Superman were breeding, and it sounds like the way to handle that in this case was to separate them. So that works out
yeah.
pretty well.
Yeah. Usually there are other things that we do, to address hormone issues, but I actually caught them in the act. So a little more drastic measures were called for than just the other things that we would tend to do for hormones, which would be things like rearranging the cage, limiting the amount of sunlight, and shortening their days, making sure that, they're on a good mixed diet where they're not getting, too overweight perhaps, because females who are overweight are more likely to lay eggs.
Yeah, if it's like there's abundant food, that tells the bird body time to breed.
Exactly.
Let's talk for a moment. I see that there's a number of perches in there, and they're very happy about leaping and flying back and forth between the perches. What other toys and stuff do you have for a happy budgie?
So these perches are a mix of different things, so that way their feet don't get tired of having everything, one size, like the traditional dowel. There is one dowel perch in the bottom here. The cage came with it, and I do tend to keep one on the bottom, so if they want to run, they have a way of hopping easily onto the food bowls. But otherwise, they're little budgies. Budgie toys are inexpensive usually, and they're plastic. They're not as destructive, of course, as their larger parrot brethren. So there's things with little mirrors. There's things with rings. They have a little ball in the bottom that they play with, which is actually a cat toy that I liberated from my sister's cat one Christmas. They've got things that spin and turn, and they've got bells. And this thing here is a mirror that little bitty Hope loves. That's her favorite toy. And then they make toys out of anything else that's in here, which is their food and their bowls and their ladders and all of that. So the one thing I do plan to add to the cage is maybe take out one of the things that they're not using so much and put in a set of rings for Hope, because when budgies are babies, they love the rings and they just climb in and out of them. It's so much fun to watch.
Oh, nice. So in our last minute or so, what else would you like to share that potential adopters might want to know about Hope and Azula?
Well, I think that they're very active. I think they're very friendly. I think they'll be easy to hand tame. And with little Hope, yes, being so young, she or he has a lot of potential. And if she turns out to be a boy, you get them young like this, it's easier to teach them to talk. Now, granted, I've never had one talk, but if that's something you're interested in doing,
right.
That's when you do it, is when they're young.
Right. That makes sense. And of course, there's no guarantee, regardless of age, that any bird will talk, but it's a good time to teach them. Peggy, thanks so much for sharing these two. They are just so cute. Really appreciate it.
They are. All budgies are cute.
Yeah, but these guys are especially cute. They're the cutest budgies I've seen all morning, at least until we get to the next one. All right.
Until we get to the next one.
We are now going to go from a very small bird to a much larger bird. Here we have Rocky. And we remembered to mute the video, which is great. Rocky is appearing on video because he's a movie star. No, it was just difficult to arrange getting Rocky on camera live. So we have this video. Rocky is an Amazon. I want to remind people as we start to talk, and I'll be talking with Shauna about Rocky. If you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A channel, and we'll do our best to get them answered. So here's Rocky. Tell us a little bit about Amazons in general and about Rocky and what kind of Amazon he is.
Jonathan, I'm happy to be here today to talk about this awesome Amazon and Amazons in general. Rocky is a 39-year-old blue front Amazon.
So let's stop right there. 39 years old. That's, that's
Yes.
older than many people in our audience, I'm sure. Is that old for an Amazon? How old do they get?
Well, he's actually probably what you would consider middle-aged. Amazons can have a life expectancy of around 60 to 80 years. So he still has quite a few years ahead of him, but he's not a younger bird, but he's not too old by any means.
Kind of analogous to a 40-year-old person.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about Amazons. I know they're known for being really smart and also really loud.
Yes.
What's it like spending time with Rocky?
Yes, Amazons are on the louder side of the bird
spectrum
community. And so he does have his moments where he can be quite loud. So that's something anybody considering adopting an Amazon would want to take into consideration. They are very, very active and feisty little birds sometimes. They can be a handful at times, especially during the breeding season. And Rocky certainly does fit that description. He does have his moments. Right here, we're seeing in the video where he is really enjoying his head scritches, and he's enjoying his foster mom giving him some attention. But we don't want to let that let people think that that's how Amazons are all the time. As I mentioned, they do have their feisty sides to them. So he has shown that he has a liking towards more of the female caregiver in the home.
He likes
yes, he has gone after the man of the house. So that is also something we want people to consider when adopting Rocky. That
he would do better with a woman as his primary caretaker.
Exactly, he would.
That has to do with his backstory. Tell us a little bit about how Rocky came to Mikaboo and what he's been through.
Yes, Rocky was found by a good Samaritan who saw that he was being kept outside all the time in the front yard of a house where there were children who were taunting him a lot. So he was able to persuade the owner to relinquish Rocky to him. But unfortunately, Rocky was very, very bonded to the person who found him, so who rescued him from that situation, I should say. So did not get along at that time with the other birds in the home and did not want to share that attention. In his current foster home, though, we're finding, however, there are other Amazons, and he does do okay with those other Amazons. So, it's just finding, and maybe that he's now in a safer environment and he's more comfortable. That and as we can see, there's one of the Amazons coming over to check out what's going on. That double yellowhead Amazon is Miho, and that is a Mikaboo alumni birdie who found his forever home there in the foster home, so he has been adopted. But as you can see, Rocky's doing okay with having Miho present.
With Miho there.
Yeah, he's doing okay with that. And the foster home also has dogs present, so Rocky has not tended to be overstressed with them around, although they don't come in direct contact, but it hasn't stressed him out, so he would probably do okay with other animals in the house as long as they're kept safe,
kept appropriately and safely. Socially. So I want to just recap, because you've just given us so much great information. And one is, that Rocky's been through a lot, but has come through it still really, really doing well with a female caregiver and
Yes.
willing to be touched and scritched. Doesn't do as well with men, probably does not do particularly well with children, but is not freaked out by dogs. So all of these things are important if you're considering a bird like Rocky. He could do really well with a female caregiver who has a dog and doesn't have small children.
Or has other, other birds who are
Amazons
okay with
in
that too.
particular.
Yes, so that
Yeah,
was a good point. That was a very good point you brought out about children. So, it would be best for Rocky to not go to a home where there are smart children because of his experience with them. We do not want to put him in a situation where he might attack the children or
He
bite.
was pretty traumatized. So yeah, that
Yeah.
would be a bad
Yeah.
situation. Want to remind people that if you have questions about Rocky, you can ask them in the Q&A. Does Rocky have any health issues? I know when I turned 40, I started having some aches and pains.
Yes, actually, Rocky is on 2 oral medications, meaning that they're given by mouth. So he's not on any injectable medications, which is good. So that's a little easier to give to him. But he's on 2 medications twice a day.
How do you give him the oral medications?
Rocky has been doing well with taking his meds when you put him in food. So usually we would gently towel the bird and give them their medicine directly into their mouth. But sometimes you'll have a bird like Rocky that will eat it with his food. So that's worked out pretty well for him.
And what's his diet like?
Rocky is on a pelleted diet of Supreme. He likes to have nuts like a walnut or maybe an almond as a nice treat. He gets his fresh foods, so he loves apples, pea pods, cherries. Sometimes he'll eat grapes, carrots, broccoli. So, we always encourage people to try different vegetables and fruit to see what their birds really like and go after, and to give them some variety. Amazons, the other thing I to point out with Amazons is that they can sometimes be not as active, and you can see Rocky's a little overweight there. So you want to make sure that they're getting a lot of activity out of cage time where they can move around, and they want to have a cage that's big enough for them to move around in and get some exercise so they don't become perch potatoes. And also watch their food portions so that they're not, overeating and becoming overweight. So that's something, also to take into mind with Amazons. They do love their food. They eat with gusto. So
we have a question coming in.
Sure.
Does Rocky fly?
He probably does. He is, being a little that he's getting up there a lot. He's probably not as active and not as much. But as I mentioned before, that he did go after the husband in the foster home, so he does have that. He does have that ability to fly. Yes.
Right. Okay. The other question as we're wrapping up is about what are the medication costs for him per month or per year?
I do not have that information.
Okay, so a potential adopter could ask that of the species coordinator.
Right.
While birds are in foster, Mikaboo covers their medical expenses. We mentioned that he's on medication, but we didn't say what it's for.
Well, the medications that he is on are for arthritis, and that are often given to birds that have atherosclerosis of the heart. So
Got it.
as an older bird, these things can happen. And again, as I was mentioning, when we're not keeping them active enough and watching their weight, sometimes the bearing all that weight on their legs is can cause that arthritis and cause them to have more difficulty, which is like a vicious cycle because then it also
Then they
makes
can,
them not as active.
yep.
So.
Boy, he's really just got a lovely temperament. You can see it in the video. So in 30 seconds or so, as we're wrapping up, anything that you would like to share with potential adopters, something else that they should be aware of with Rocky?
Well, the last thing is just in talking about toys. Rocky loves to chew things up. So he loves anything he can chew up, like wood toys, balsa blocks, crinkle paper, cardboard. It's nice to give him that exercise. It gives him something to destroy and get out that energy with. So he's gonna be a very, very nice companion for a female caregiver who has the patience with him and has experience with Amazon behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Shauna, for sharing Rocky. He's certainly been through a lot, and what a wonderful bird. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, because we can never get enough budgie cuteness, we're going to go to Susanna and talk about Magglio. And
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? I see another little budgie head at least. So is Magglio the green and yellow, and who's the blue fellow?
So Magglio is the green and yellow, and she's cooperating by being center stage right now. Her companions are both blue, and they are also both Mikaboo birds, Sapphire and Cirrus.
And both Sapphire and Cirrus, in addition to Magglio, are also available for adoption, but they were featured in their own segment on another adoption fair. So we'll mostly talk about Magglio. And I want to remind viewers they can ask questions about the budgies in the Q&A. Boy, Magglio, you are just so cute. So let's start again with budgie basics. What do these guys eat? Looks like you have some fennel hanging.
Yes, like both, like what Peggy said, there's variety is really important. And you're always trying to find what vegetable they like the most. They seem to really like fennel. You also see in the picture carrot tops and chard. And one of the tips I learned from other Mikaboo folks was that sometimes you present vegetables in different ways. So you can see how the chard, I took off a lot of the green, and I'm trying to entice them to stand on it as a perch. They also love seeds. So mainly their diet in the morning is pellets. And then in the evening, I give them seed, and we'll see which one comes to my hand. But they all love seed and millet, and that's sort of a treat.
Right.
And they're generally okay about sharing. Magglio shares the food very well, but I guess they're not coming up. Come here, let's see if you come on.
Now, how did Magglio come to Mikaboo?
She was surrendered with 2 other boys, and I don't know her story. I don't know her story. She seems to be sort of middle-aged, not too young, although she is very active.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
And flexible. She wants to make friends with the other birds, and recently I've seen her regurgitating food for them, which I think is a kind of a bonding.
Yeah, that could be courtship behavior, but the other 2 are also female, so.
Yeah, so you see how her tail is a little bit short. She was initially fostered with her brothers, or not, sorry, 2 males. We don't know if they're brothers or not, but there was a lot of mating going on. And so it was determined best to separate them. And so Magglio came and joined this cage of females. But I do notice that she does do a little bit of mating courtship type things. I didn't know that the regurgitating food was a courtship activity. Let's see if she'll, what you gonna see? But she'll go around in circles sometimes and make little cooing noises. So she's very, she dances
Yeah.
to attract the other birds, I think.
Now, are these three, Cirrus and Sapphire and Magglio, bonded, or they could be adopted out separately to?
They can totally be adopted separately. They, you know, their interactions change all the time. Let me see if she can, you're not in the screen right now, Magglio. They're, you know, it's just really interesting how they have different, you know, what sometimes I see Magglio and Cirrus, you know, sharing food, and then other times I see the two bluebirds together. So they all their interactions change.
Just like us when we're in groups, you know, we hang out with different people in the same group sometimes. I did see Magglio just perched on that stalk of chard. It's so funny to see, you know, because budgies are so much smaller than the African grays that I've got at my house, where if a gray tried to perch on a stalk of chard, that wouldn't go particularly well necessarily. So has Magglio been around either children or other pets besides budgies?
I don't know. We have, I have teenagers, and we don't really have a house full of kids recently, but they're totally used to, you know, loud games going on the table next to them. I think they're, one thing with children, we just have to make sure that the child is learning about you know, to read all the signs on the birds and to just follow the safe practices, you know, closing all the windows before the cage is opened.
Yeah.
But they would be, I think they would be delightful companions for a child.
So what is, for people who haven't had birds, or in particular budgies, what's a day with budgies like? What are they like to live with?
They generally, so I do cover them at night, and if I come down, you know, before 7, I hear them sort of pecking at trying to find leftover seeds in their dishes. I uncover them at around 9 or 8, and they all go to their seed bowls right away, and then they fly around a little bit. An hour later, they're back at their seed bowls. So they eat generally all throughout the day. Sirius, one of the bluebirds, tends to nap a lot. So I think she's older. But then they'll, you know, sometimes they'll all three get really excited and be flapping their wings like crazy. At dinner time, we have our dining table next to the cage. They'll sometimes try to talk over us. So it all varies. Generally, you do hear, these birds are not too loud. You know, they'll get into a sort of a happy hour when they're loud, but that's generally not typical. Generally, these particular 3 birds, I think, are more quiet.
And it's certainly not Amazon or conure loud. Even when budgies get going, it's kind of a noisy murmur.
No, but we do have to stop talking sometimes. I'm going to spray the fennel to see if anybody will come play on it. Because that's one of the ways you can play with the birds is you give them a bath, and it looks like they want to. And this way, they get a little water coming off the fennel, and they play in it. And they crawl all over it. So it's great.
Do any of the 3 of them have medical issues? Or are they all pretty healthy? Or
they all are. So Magglio's feet are a little bit mottled, but when I took her to the vet, there was nothing. She's cleared. They took a blood test, and she's there's no reason for it. So I think she's quite healthy. The one in the fennel right now is Cirrus. I think she's the older one. And she's got a little bit of an air sac that's larger than the others, which sometimes makes her look, you see that little bump that she's not fat.
She just showed it off perfectly, yes.
Yeah, it's very oddly shaped. And it will be more pronounced when she's standing up tall. And then my other bird, Sapphire, I've had for 2 years. And in that time, she's had, in the beginning, she had to have her beak trimmed quite often. Here she is coming.
Yeah.
And that could possibly be a liver issue. For the past 2 years, I'd say their diet has been pretty healthy. And the beak is not growing quite as fast as it used to.
Boy, it was really fun to see just how all of them wanted to play in the fennel once you sprayed it.
You have to sort of take your cues. Sometimes they don't, and sometimes they do. It's very cute though.
Sure is.
What you doing, Cirrus?
So in our last minute or so, what else would you like to share with potential adopters for Magglio or Cirrus or Sapphire?
I would say one of the greatest pleasures I have with these birds is making direct eye contact and just sort of engaging them. And I don't know what they think when we're talking to them and treating them, but you just feel like there's a real intelligence there. So I love being close to them and looking at them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Magglio, you have been such a star, and Cirrus and Sapphire, a wonderful supporting cast for this. So thank you.
Okay.
Now we're going to go up in size just a little bit. And here are the three amigos, Caspar and Pretty Boy, who are the two cockatiels. And you can guess that Caspar is the friendly white cockatiel, and Lucca, who's a green cheek conure. Hey, Pam.
Hey.
So tell us about the three amigos. It's not that common for different species birds to be bonded this way in a trio.
Yeah,
Introduce us.
Certainly. They all came to us from the same aviary rescue. There was a woman who had a small outdoor aviary, and as often happens with these long-lived pets, she came to a point where her health prevented her from taking adequate care of the birds in her aviary and surrendered a bunch to us. Initially, the two cockatiels were housed separately from the green cheek conure. However, Lucca started plucking himself, and birds will often do that if they are stressed, and it's a form of OCD, if you will.
Right.
As it happens, he was housed in a separate cage, but close enough to these other cockatiels so that he would call out to them. And eventually the foster parent figured out that perhaps she ought to let them interact a bit more. She allowed that, and the plucking stopped. We have since seen, and you saw a little bit there, that birds, that all three birds will preen each other. So Lucca, the green cheek, will preen Pretty Bird, has also been seen preening Caspar. Caspar and Pretty Bird preen each other. Pretty Bird has preened the green cheek conure Lucca. So they're all, as you stated, very good friends, and we would like to see them adopted together as a small flock.
So let's start with Caspar and Pretty Boy. They're the two cockatiels. How are they alike and how are they different?
Well, what's obvious is that they're alike in that they're both cockatiels. And they share the same age. They're both about 16 years old.
Is that old for a cockatiel?
Good point. So for reference, we've seen cockatiels come into Mikaboo as old as the low 30s. So I would say that these cockatiels are about middle age. And just like with people, we all know folks who, even though a human's life expectancy is in the mid 80s, where people have passed away either much before or much after that particular date. It all has to do with genetics, diet, exercise, all of that. But these guys seem to be on a good trajectory, so I would expect that they would have several good years ahead of them. They also share the same diet. They are on a mixture of Supreme and this other brand that I can't remember right now, pellets. They also get greens, although they tend to not go so much for lettuce as they do for kale and anything with sort of a crinkly edge to it. They also really like sliced apple, and they've experimented with oranges, where I cut open a slice and they sort of drink from the exposed bags, if you will, of juice there.
Right. Yes. And what about play and toys and flight?
Yeah, so you see the hanging toy behind Caspar there. That is one of their favorite toys, in part because it's a foraging toy. You can sort of see at the right angles that there is a Nutriberry stuck into the top
Oh, yeah.
fold of that particular toy. So they can use that particular toy to try to get at the food, the treat that is there. You'll also see that it's fairly chewed through itself. So they also like chewing through wicker and just making the thing bedraggled a little bit. There is a bell. And while I haven't seen them explicitly ring the bell, they do like the sound of it. And so that's what they've mainly experimented with so far, toy-wise.
And we talked about their diet, mixed greens and veggies and some fruits. Let's talk a little bit about Lucca, who is now playing with the toy and enjoying the foraging there. So Lucca's a green cheek conure. Mm-hmm. And do we know about how old he is?
Yes, Lucca is the youngster of the bunch. He is about 10 years old, and conures of his type, again, the life expectancy is around about 30, so he is quite a bit younger, and he also shows it in his activity. He is the bounciest one, if you will, of the three. And whenever we let them out for out of cage time, he's also the one that is more experimental in terms of flying about and exploring different parts of the house.
Now, all three of them fly, right? And they get a little bit of flight time every day.
Yeah, they all three fly, but to different degrees. So Pretty Bird has a wing clip, and Pretty Bird's version of flight is a downward slope, so no gaining of altitude. So generally when Pretty Bird gets out, I hear a plop on the floor and I have to go over and be that human elevator and get the bird back up to wherever the bird wants to go. Caspar and Lucca are more flighted. They have their primaries and they can gain altitude and explore more of the house. And unfortunately, they tend to want to go visit with my parrotlet, and the parrotlet is not all crazy about that. So I have to shoo them away from that one bird cage that they seem to be attracted to. But otherwise they're good. And there's Caspar sort of mugging for the camera.
I see that. Are they hand tamed? Do they get on well with people? Do they step up?
They are not afraid of hands. In fact, they will hiss at a hand to make it go away. That's what the cockatiels do anyway. Lucca has a strange relationship with hands. He will come to the front of the cage as if he really wants to chat with you. And as long as that's all you do, you're fine. But if your hand goes directly at him, he will back up and away from it. That said, if you actually catch him in your hand, then he will snuggle with you. I've had him up on my shoulder for an extended period of time. And I've also been able to feed all of them from my hand with their favorite treat, which happens to be seed. And there you've got a nice shot of Lucca holding the Nutriberry in his foot. That's something that the cockatiels do not do, but it's quite charming to see a conure do it.
Yeah, it's like having tea with the queen.
Yes.
Very proper. And we could see him get that Nutriberry out of the foraging toy, which took a little bit of work.
It did, and that's what makes it fun for them.
Yeah. Yes. We'll work for food is kind of the parrot motto. How do they do? You said they were kind of fascinated by the parrotlet. They do okay with other birds. How about other animals?
In my household, the only other animal is me. They do fine with me. Don't know about four-legged types like dogs and cats. And the previous owner, to the best of my knowledge, did not have dogs, cats, children around and about. So it's unknown as to how they do with other mammals.
I remember that they spent some time in a foster that did have a small dog, and they were fine with that. So as we wrap up, Pam, is there anything else that you would like to add for potential adopters to know about the three amigos, other than that we want them to remain the three amigos because they'll be happiest that way?
The only thought I would leave someone else with is with their vocalizations. During most of the day, call it 80% of the day, they are pretty darn quiet. And in fact, they're behind me now, and I don't think you can hear them. However, there will be times, call it other Zoom calls, or when the sun rises and they want to greet the sun, or when the sun goes away and they want to declare the end of the day, when they will be more lively. And Caspar, our friendly ghost in the middle there, is the one that is most vocal in terms of making his vocalizations hearable. Right. So just be aware of that. Again, everything is a matter of degrees. These guys are going to be louder, certainly, than Budgies and conures, most conures, like Suns and Nandays, but they will, be quieter than the cockatoos and the larger birds. Conures, I'm just going to speak to Lucca there because conures range in terms of decibels. And Lucca is definitely on the much quieter side of the conure sound range. It's nowhere near Sun, Nande, or Gende.
Right. Wonderful. So on a quiet to loud spectrum, they're toward the quieter end of the spectrum, though not quite as quiet as Budgies.
Correct.
Pam, thanks so much for sharing these three wonderful and funny birds with us. And with that, now we're going to go even smaller to a trio of zebra finches who are known as Do, Ray, and Me. Do, a bird, a teeny bird. Sorry, I just had to break out in song. Hi, Vina.
Hi.
Thanks for sharing these finches with us. And again, if people have questions about finches or about any of the other birds for that matter, they can post them in the Q&A. So do we know how old they are?
Yes, of course. Yeah, they are around 2 to 3 year old. Yes, that's something I came to know.
And is that old for a finch?
Yes, could you please repeat it again? I couldn't hear it.
I said, how old do finches get? What's a typical lifespan for them?
Yeah, they live around 5 to 10 years if they live in cage.
Right.
And but that did I research. So if they live in wild, so they live around 5 to 6 years. Yeah.
Right. So these guys are fairly young, have a lot of good years ahead of them.
Yes.
Do you know how they came to Mikaboo?
Uh, they surrendered by their owner at avian place. So that's why Mikaboo got it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they tend to be quiet birds, but they do make noise. They're kind of nice, really pleasant background noise. Do you find that?
Yes, yes. There be, they make a really kind of sound, like kind of music sound. And this music sound really soothing your ear. I like the sound, the beeping, peeping, I like that sound. Yeah. This sound is not really, see the sound now, you can hear it. It's not that loud
Mhm.
sound.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not loud and it is very musical and very sweet.
Yes, very
Um,
sweet.
Now, I know that they've been doing pretty well in this cage and that Mikaboo is going to be getting you a bigger cage so they have even more room because it's really good for them to fly.
Yes, yes, of course, I really like that, because they want to fly all around the cage and they really enjoy that part. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
What do they eat and what are some of their favorite foods?
Their favorite food, they eat pellet and mixed um, small seeds, kind of small seeds. And I give them a kind of some sesame and chia seeds and some kind of um, high quality, say, a mixed seed.
Mhm.
And my preferable, I give them a vegetables, fresh vegetables, and fresh fruits, including spinach, bell pepper, lettuce, and and I came to know they eat wild spinach and green fenugreek leaves. They touch everything. They try to eat everything. And the vegetable and fruit, they eat apple, grapes, berries. They don't eat like the big word. They eat the whole bunch. They touch everything. So apple, cherries, grapes, bell pepper. They even they touch orange too, little bit.
Right.
So
They just take
yeah,
small amounts and
yes, yes,
they're very small. It's hard to
very.
tell here, but they're about 2 inches long, maybe about five cent
Uh,
5 centimeters.
in Yes, yes, including tail, maybe 3 inches.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
yeah. They're little.
and
Um,
they yes, and sorry, I'm interrupting you. They're using cuttle bone too, very nicely. So
uh,
they're using that one too. Yeah,
yes. So, do they spend any time out of their cage?
they do, they do. They
Um,
do when I came back from my work. So I opened the door and they came out from the cage. And it is very surprising me. So they ask for me. They come to the door side. They know where is the door open. And they come turn by turn. And they ask, like, the big word, how
yeah,
they request you, how they ask, how they beg you.
yeah.
So they ask for that, like that. Yeah. So then I close the door because I have the big bird too. So then I put them in the cage outside, and I close my bedroom door, and then I leave them open and they fly. And by
Dina,
the
you
yes,
raised a really wonderful point about not having, and this is just important for parrot owners to know, so I mention it, not having small birds out with big birds at the same time because just accidents happen and really devastating injuries can happen. So really good for you that you make sure that they're kept separate. That's
oh,
great.
yeah,
Um,
my big bird always eager to meet them, and I know them. They are going to injure them very easily.
yes, yeah,
They always, whenever they're with me, they always eager to meet them, and I somehow, I don't know, I means it's look like me. Whenever they are going to meet them, they are if they bite them, they are very little, and it is too much for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
I
It
have to
easily
be
could
very
be.
yeah.
Easily could be. How do they interact with people? Do they step up or are they afraid of hands?
I did try very beginning because I spent like 2 hours with them, and they actually did try, and after that, and they get tired very easily, and after that I realized that maybe some accident can happen. So then I realized that no, I should not do that, because if some accident can happen, so I cannot means I feel guilty forever in my life.
Sure.
So because they started to get a feed from my hand. They did start,
Right.
but not actually from my hand, but they started to eat a feed from the bowl on my hand, and they started to eat
Right.
that part.
So they were
uh,
able to be more comfortable with you. That's great.
yes,
That's
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, so they started to do that, but after that my work start from in person, so I did not get that much time. So when I spend a little less time with them, and they start get tiring. So because I was in hurry, so then I said no, because they are very tiny bird, so maybe they can get hurt or something, so I should not do that. So if someone has a like, and they can spend continuously, it's not like they can do just like 30 minutes or 15 minutes and they can just grab them. No, they have to spend a like 2 hours very patiently. So
Yeah.
then they can be very tamed. They can be.
Yeah.
So
I either a lot of time or small amounts of time, but very consistently day by day. Both of those
day by day,
can
yes, day
work.
by day, very consistently,
So
yes.
uh,
Mhm.
we're going to have to wrap up, but I wanted to know what else would you want to tell people about living with finches and adopting these birds?
uh, you know uh, about them, they are about finches, because I have a small word and I have a big word both. About finches, they are easy to care, and very minimal time to they required a commitment, and generally they are very fine with the very minimum time. They will not need you to keep them your company. But surprisingly, when you come when you are out and come in, they need you, they interact with you very easily, and they talk to you, and you are very surprised on that time. They talk to you, and they also, and they will be fine after that.
Yeah, it's
And
really, really amazing how much
ye-
they want to and enjoy interacting with you.
yes, yeah, and they are very easygoing companion. On
Yeah.
that way, they are very easygoing companion in your house, and I just love them on that way.
All right. Thank you so much, Vina.
Yeah,
We're
thank you.
going to wrap up here. I want to remind our viewers that you can ask questions in the Q&A tab, and we'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. So thank you all for attending Mikaboo's April Virtual Adoption Fair. And if you have ideas or comments on how we can improve it for next time, please include those in the event survey. You'll get a link to that event survey when you exit. And we review those comments, go over them. It's really helpful for us because we like to get better. And your feedback is helpful. There are a lot more birds within the Mikaboo organization who need their forever homes. If you fell in love with one of these birds, please contact us. And if you didn't see the bird who seemed right for you, take a look at our website, mikaboo.org, and chances are you're going to find someone very special. Please remember that we are fully donation-supported nonprofit, and you can support this work of parrot rescue at mikaboo.org/donate or paypal.me/Mikaboo. We're doing these virtual adoption fairs regularly, And the next one is going to be on May 22nd, also at 1 o'clock. And you can find out about these and other events on our website. Once again, mikaboo.org. So a big, big thank you to all of our foster parents and their birds for being brave enough to come on video. And we hope that you enjoyed meeting these birds. They certainly seem to have a good time being here to be met. And huge thanks to not only the foster parents and birds, but also all the other volunteers who provide technical support, keep the Q&A going, and overall help this event go smoothly. Thank you all. We'll see you next month.